Welcome to The Method, real talk for real people. And this is your announcer, always me, Dee Marie, coming straight at you from Perkins School of Theology on the campus of Southern Methodist University. And if you're excited like I am to be here, let me hear you make some noise. This episode of The Method is sponsored by Better Community Development Incorporated, The Business Experts, Denman, Hamilton and Associates CPAs, and St. Andrew United Methodist Church, Little Rock. It's time for the talking to begin, y'all. You're listening to The Method, real talk for real people from SMU. How y'all doing? Woo! I'm excited to be here for round 3 of The Method, real talk for real people here at Perkins School of Theology. And I'd like to give a special shout out to Reverend Connie Nelson and Ms. Tracy Allreed and the Perkins Student Association for helping me put this together. And I want to give a big shout out to my co-host for this episode and chair of the Interfaith Dialogue at Perkins, Ms. Stephanie Hayes. What's been up with you, girl?
Oh, not much. Just trying to keep ahead of school and life and having fun.
So, class are going good for you this semester?
Classes are good. I have tons of reading and writing, but I like and really want to take all the classes that I'm in. And hey, I just be sitting watching Netflix otherwise.
Well, it's all right to watch Netflix. I do that too.
I do sometimes, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know. But before we go any further, could you tell our listening audience in Arkansas about yourself before we go on with the show? You know, your degree program and what you want to be when you grow up and stuff like that.
Sure. I'm in my 3rd year here at Perkins School of Theology, and I'm working on my Master's of Divinity degree. I'm also in the process of eventually becoming an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church.
Which conference?
Ooh, the North Texas Conference.
All right.
Perkins is.
All right. What's up? Yeah. Timmy Clark's in the house. Okay, well, that's what's up. It's customary on The Method to start each show with wise quotes from famous people, and Stephanie's going to read them for us and open up the floor to the audience for some feedback. You think you can do that, Steph?
Sure, Dee.
All right, let's do it.
But for the future peace of the world, and never before probably has the need for interfaith commitment been nearly as great as it is at this very moment. By Walter Cronkite. The problems we face today, violent conflicts, destruction of nature, poverty, hunger, and so on, are human-created problems which can be solved through human effort, understanding, and the development of a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. We need to cultivate a universal responsibility for one another and the planet we share. From the Dalai Lama. Let me say this loud and clear. There is a world of difference between terrorist acts and the Islamic Sharia. Islam is not only a religion, but a way of life. And at its heart lie the sacred principles of tolerance and dialogue by King Hussein of Jordan. And people of all faiths need to shape a political and social movement that reaffirms the most generous, peace-oriented, social justice-committed, and loving truths of the spiritual heritage of the human race by Rabbi Michael Lerner. So I'd like to open up the floor with discussion. Does anybody have any initial reactions or comments or thoughts about these quotes?
I think the Dalai Lama is right. These are human problems that have human solutions, but we need to seek them together as people of religious faith, and our faith strengthens us to work together.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt.
I think throughout these quotes, it talks about working together, and I think we would see if we met more people of different faiths and talked to them, we would discover that we have a lot more similarities than the differences that seem to be so polarizing.
Thank you, Katie.
I would also agree with what Rabbi Michael Lerner says, that it's not just a certain group, but people of all faiths, and even of no faith or religion at all, people of goodwill who want to live peacefully and who want to live a very contented life on earth, all need to cooperate in shaping a political and social and ecological movement that reaffirms the most generous, peace-oriented, and social justice-committed kind of earth that we can muster. And so in that regard, it calls on every one of us to really see that the way we are running things is making it worse, because the rich and poor gap is widening. There's more violence on earth than ever been in our history. And our earth is being endangered with extinction. So we got to pull our act together. And that means really together. And each one of us has a role in it. And I would really emphasize what Rabbi Michael Lerner has already said.
So, Dr. Habito, is that Globa Duca, what you teach us in world religion, does that all tie in together?
Exactly. The fact that we are all in this together and that we are in a state that is very, very dissatisfactory. So we all need to awaken to that and begin to do something to make it a little better than where we are.
What struck me the most about these quotes was from King Hussein of Jordan, because something that I readily admit to is my lack of knowledge and, quite frankly, my ignorance of Islam and of the faith of Muslims in the world. I grew up in a small suburb in Texas where there wasn't a presence of Islam or presence of Muslim families or Muslim community in a small suburb that I grew up in. And not that I believed anything that I saw on the TVs or anything like that, but not only did I not believe what was on TV, I never sought out any source. I never sought out any sort of personal relationship with someone who practices that kind of faith, and that it's a disservice to assume anything about anyone else's religion, and even to hear people on the media claim that they need Muslim voices to stand up to speak out against the acts of terror of ISIS and of other extremists, religious extremists. It feels like they're looking for a very specific answer. It's like they want to hear someone that practices Islam to say the things that they want them to say. And I find it to be more complex than that. I think something I've learned in seminary thus far is religion is extremely complex, and there's many expressions of many different faiths. I think that we need to stop looking for safe and simple answers and really look at the truth.
Dean, do you mind speaking to that, if you don't mind?
I mean, I agree wholeheartedly with it. It's my initial reaction always falls back to an us versus them mentality that I think all humans have in our preferences, whether it be religion, whether it be politics, whether it be really, I mean, our species have thrived surrounding yourself with people with like-mindedness, and it questions your own presence, your own being when you see the fastest growing religion in the world opposing the opposite of it, and you wonder why they are different, why you are the same, why you surround yourself with the people you have. But it isn't a dichotomy. It isn't them versus us. It truly is, as the professors have spoken before, it's all of us together in one. We all have different viewpoints of how to get to the end game, but it doesn't mean we're not playing by the same rules, we're not playing with the same teammates. It really comes down to, and when you get to the media aspect, I agree wholeheartedly with that also. I also don't want to blame the media, because I don't think they're intentionally going out being like these guys are the bad guys. It really just comes down to what I think is human tendency is to hold on to yourself stronger by pointing out the differences on the other side, and you want to hope that they're wrong and you're right. Because if it's the opposite, then what standing do you stand on?
All right, this conversation has been really great, but we have to pause for the cause and pay a few bills. But before we go to break, I have one question to ask you. Do you like the method? Yeah. Let our listeners know you're listening to The Method, Real Talk for Real People from SMU.
Like The Method? Then follow us all the time. Like The Method on Facebook. Hit us up on Instagram or follow us on Twitter at TheMethod3. It's easy. By doing this, you are empowered to ask our empowerment guests questions, give us immediate feedback on the show, gain access to empowerment information, see listings of music used for the show, and post pictures or shout-outs. We look forward to your posts and tweets. Thanks for supporting The Method, real talk for real people.
This empowerment message is sponsored by Better Community Development Incorporated. When we disagree and feelings are hurt, it's really hard to make peace with the person who hurt you. Here are some suggestions that you may want to consider if you want to reconcile. The first thing you might want to consider is getting to the heart of the issue. We need to own up to our mistakes and identify ways to make things better. This is Ruben Abito, Professor of World Religions and Spirituality at Perkins School of Theology. And I'm so glad that the Better Community Development Incorporated supports The Method, real talk for real people.
All right, we're back. You're listening to The Method, Real Talk for Real People here at Perkins School of Theology. And we've been talking about what people can do of different faiths to improve the living conditions in our world. And for this segment, we have three professors that I would like to introduce to our listening audience in Arkansas. For this segment, first we have Dr. Ruben Habito. He is one of my favorite teachers. He's the professor of world religions and spirituality and director of spiritual formation, and his teaching interests are world religions, East Asian Buddhism, Theology of Religions and Comparative Theology, Interreligious Perspectives in Spirituality and Mysticism. And then we have also Dr. Robert A. Hunt, who is the Director of Global Theological Education and Professor of Christian Mission and Interreligious Relations, and he is also the Director for the Center of Evangelism and Missional Church Studies, and his teaching specialties are World Religion, Interreligious Dialogue, Islam, and Missional Studies. And finally, last but not least, we have Dr. Barry E. Hughes. He is a Razorback. He hails from Arkansas, and he is a graduate of Little Rock McClellan High School. Boo! I went to Parkview. And he is a professor of supervised ministry, and his teaching specialties are supervised ministry and interreligious dialogue in the parish. All right, I have a couple of questions for you guys, if you don't mind. My first question is for Dr. Hunt. How easy is it to develop relationships with people of different faiths through the local church?
It's actually pretty easy if you reach out to them. Most people of other faiths other than Christian faith, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, and Hindus, are anxious to engage in dialogue if they're invited, and if you do it in an open-minded way. I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to share meals, although you've got to talk about what kind of food you eat because people have dietary restrictions, or just to sit around and talk about telling stories. One of the things that we work on in our classes for interreligious dialogue is called narrative dialogue, in which people just tell their story to each other. We don't talk about theological issues or theological controversies. We tell our stories to each other and get to know each other better. And that pretty quickly leads to not only better understanding, but things we can work on together as well.
Oh, that's interesting. My next question is for Dr. Habito. Do you think that it is possible for people of different faiths to deal with issues such as childhood hunger, and why not?
Yes, by all means. Things like hunger, homelessness, the suffering that we all endure as human beings is something that touches the heart of each and every one of us. And so someone may or may not be religious, but we all feel hunger, and so when we know that a neighbor, another human being is hungry, we all can resonate with that. And so if we are a member of a faith tradition that precisely emphasizes the infinite value of each human being, then we will see it all the more intensely in the light of our religious faith, that hunger needs to be addressed. And so with that, precisely, our religious faiths can be an enlightenment as well as an empowerment for us to address these issues that our fellow human beings, including ourselves, are facing on this earth.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Habito. And this question is for Dr. Hughes. Dr. Hughes, would you mind just, sharing about your adventure in your interfaith community that you experienced while being a pastor in Louisiana? I know when I was in Dr. Habito's World Religion class, you told us about how your church or parish, I don't know how they say it in Louisiana, reached out to different interfaith communities like the Jewish community and the Islamic community. I was really fascinated about how you all invited the Islamic community in your church and y'all had dialogue. Do you mind telling our listeners in Arkansas about it?
Sure, be glad to. I was appointed to the Asbury United Methodist Church in Bossier City in the summer of 2001. We all know that in the fall of 2001 was the event that will forever be called 9/11. Bossier City is a military community. Barksdale Air Force Base is there. That's where they flew President Bush on that day for safekeeping. So the people who attended my congregation, many of them were in the military. Almost all of them had some connection family-wise to the military. And so in addition to just the general effect that day had on all of us, it had a very immediate effect on folks in our community because some folks were gone the next day to begin the war. So tensions were very high and the rhetoric was very strong about Muslims had done this and we're at war with Islam. And as a pastor, I struggled as a new pastor particularly, I struggled, how can we talk about peace and do our part for making peace? We can't stop this war, but we can make peace where we are. And so that is where the dialogue had its birth, was the idea of how do we get people together just as neighbors. The image that we used was the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? That was the question that we asked. Surprisingly, no one in my congregation that I randomly questioned thought that there were any Muslims in our community. And yet we had 2 mosques in the Shreveport-Bossier area. And so I think that showed some important things. The first one was that the Christians and Muslims in that community had lived wonderfully together, and so peacefully together, they didn't divide themselves up. And yet, at the same time, it also showed that we were pretty unaware of the context of our ministry. And so our goal was if we could bring some Methodist folks together with some Muslim folks and they could talk as people, that might make a difference.
Did it make a difference?
It did make a difference. It was a very enriching experience. It was a very risky thing for both communities in the aftermath of all that was going on. After 9/11, particularly found our Muslim neighbors to be very courageous, willing to share of themselves that way after they had been treated poorly by neighbors and business folks and some religious groups. And I think it really returned our congregation to the idea that to be a Christian and to be a witness is to bear witness to God's love in the world. And that you do that in a lot of different ways. And one way is to be a good neighbor to people who are different than you are.
What I remember in your story is that one of the very inspiring moments was when they were asking them to, when the Methodist group was asking the Muslim counterparts to join them at their weekly potluck.
Yes.
And they were kind of worried, and so they said, well, what's the condition? Well, do you eat chicken? And well, since they did, so they were welcomed into the potluck, and that was a beginning of, again, a deepening friendship. When you have a meal together, then the relationship between you and someone else really changes.
Yes.
So that was really something significant, and I really loved that part of the story.
Okay, well, I got a question, and it has to deal with the stuff that we have in the community. Homelessness and crime are such big issues in communities everywhere and across America. We can safely say that. So which one would be the most easiest to tackle from an interfaith perspective?
Well, my experience in being in community organizing groups with people from other faith communities is that the easiest successes to have are those for which there's already a structure in place in the community to deal with. And so particularly crime, one experience that we had down in South Louisiana was dealing with crime in a particular area that was neglected by the police for racial and other reasons. And yet, since there was a police department and there was a structure there, we could work together to kind of put pressure on to change that. And in that one neighborhood, in 1 year, crime went down 97%.
Wow.
Just through, we didn't spend any money, we didn't do anything except make the community do what they already were supposed to be doing. So I find it helpful. That's a good way to have a win. We didn't have to create a structure.
That is awesome. This is very insightful, but we need to hear a quick word from our sponsors, but don't turn that dial. You're listening to The Method, Real Talk for Real People from Perkins School of Theology.
This empowerment message is sponsored by Better Community Development Incorporated. If you want to get involved in your community, here are a few suggestions. It's always good to be a member of your neighborhood association. And if you want, volunteer at your neighborhood alert center to stay in the know on what's going on. And if you see a need that needs to be met in your local community, well, guess what? It's all right to raise money for the cause. This is Robert Hunt, Professor of Christian Mission and Interreligious Relations at Perkins School of Theology, and it's good to know that Better Community Development Incorporated supports the method Real talk for real people.
This empowerment message is sponsored by Better Community Development Incorporated. If you want to get involved with hunger relief in your local community, here are a few suggestions. The first thing you may want to do is teach people how to prepare nutritious and expensive meals. Or you might want to volunteer as a SNAP volunteer to make sure that people who are eligible know how to receive benefits. And finally, have your church or organization have a feeding program for children. Children that don't eat can't learn, and every child deserves a fair chance at learning. This is Katie Nelson, Master's of Divinity student at Perkins School of Theology, and I am glad to know that Better Community Development Incorporated supports the method, Real Talk for Real People.
All right, we're back. We've been talking about how people of different faiths can come together and make our community a better place. And this is something I'm very passionate about learning to do. And for this segment, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie. But before I do that, I would like to give a big thank you on behalf of the staff and crew of the Method. And I want to thank the Perkins community for taking the time to deal with this, because I know that for those of us who are going to be pastors, this is information that can be very helpful. So take it away, staff.
That's right, Dee. Thanks. And I have some questions that I'd like to ask some of the members of our audience. So professors, students, feel free to jump on in with your thoughts. The first question is, if a church wanted to start an interfaith partnership, what are 3 steps to get that into motion?
I think, first of all, those kind of relationships grow out of the relationship that the leaders already have, a pastor and an imam or a rabbi. So through an alliance or community organizing, you already have some basis to try to build that relationship. I think the second step is to come to terms and help the church come to terms with the fact that this is not a program that will ever have 100% of the community participating in it. It'll be a small group of people who are passionate about that. And then the third would be to really encourage people to be patient. It's not going to change the world in a week, but it'll change their lives over the conversation.
I just add 2 things to that. First of all, sometimes you have to be daring as a pastor or any religious leader to make that other connection with somebody. You can't always hide within the warm embrace of a group. It has to be one-on-one. I think the second thing for those of us who are Christians is that the only way you can overcome the fear of those who are other than you is through your knowledge of the love of Christ. And the congregations that are able to reach out and the individuals who are able to reach out are those who are confident because they know that God loves them. And in the confidence of that love, they can take that kind of risk. So I think there's a strong responsibility of the church to foster within its membership the kind of love and sense of God's love that gives them the strength to dare to do things that are different.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. I think this is a great question for the professors, but definitely some of the students in the audience. A lot of us have been taking world religions with Dr. Hunt this semester. And the question is, what's an example of how interfaith dialogue can be used to gain a better understanding of other religions so that we can work together?
So as you mentioned, a lot of us are taking world religions with Dr. Hunt right now. And so I'll talk about some of the interfaith dialogue that I've experienced as a part of that class. And so as part of the class, I'm part of a dialogue group that goes to the Islamic Association of North Texas up in Richardson. And it's been a very interesting experience. And you know, really just in terms of basic understanding of another religion. I mean, there were members of the group coming from Perkins who were all Christian, and then members of the group from the mosque who did not know basic tenets of faith of the other group, not because they hated the other group, but just because they hadn't been exposed to it. So just on terms of a basic understanding, you know, that's something that interfaith dialogue can really help grow.
That was great, you guys, but it's that time again. We need to hear from our sponsors. You're listening to The Method, real talk for real people from SMU.
Like The Method? Then follow us all the time. Like The Method on Facebook, hit us up on Instagram, or follow us on Twitter at The Method Podcast. It's easy. By doing this, you are empowered to ask our empowerment guests questions, give us immediate feedback on the show, gain access to empowerment information, see listings of the music used for the show, and post pictures and shout-outs. We look forward to your posts and tweets. Thanks for supporting The Method, real talk for real people. This
30-second empowerment moment is brought to you by the tax experts, Denman, Hamilton and Associates. When it comes to making good financial decisions, it's good to get started on financial empowerment as soon as possible. Start with a budget and stick to it. Try living below your means. Buying things on sale could save you a lot of money. And most importantly, invest your money. Let your money work for you. Make an appointment today with the tax experts. This is KV Knox for the tax experts, Denman, Hamilton and Associates. And we're so glad that Better Community Development is rebuilding communities and restoring lives. Don't forget to like Denman, Hamilton and Associates on Facebook and follow them on Twitter for more tips on financial empowerment.
This empowerment message is sponsored by St. Andrew United Methodist Church. Here are some suggestions that might be helpful if you want to make new friends. It's always good to greet people with a smile. Be respectful and listen. Listen to their story because everybody has a story. This is Roy, Master's of Divinity student at Perkins School of Theology, and I'm glad to know that St. Andrew United Methodist Church supports the method, real talk for real people.
This empowerment message is sponsored by St. Andrew United Methodist Church. At St. Andrew United Methodist Church, we appreciate the gift that diversity brings, so we'd like to give a few suggestions on how others can accept diversity in their local communities. It's always good to treat people you meet like a friend, and while getting to know that person, it may be good to find out what you have in common. And finally, realize that people matter, and that their ideals and cultures can add meaning to our own. This is Dina Marie Hamilton, Master's of Divinity student at Perkins School of Theology, and I'm so glad that my family of faith supports the method, Real Talk for Real People. We're back, and it's been a blast as always, and I'm going to just hand the mic over to the chair of Interfaith Dialogue here at Perkins. And if you don't mind, Stephanie, could you summarize the show and give us your insights to help us digest everything that we've just talked about?
Sure, Dee. I think one word that summarizes everything that we've been talking about is people. Getting past differences and recognizing that we're all people and having, whether it's the courage to reach out to someone who might be different from you in some way, or just sitting down and having a meal. I think recognizing that we're all people living here in this world and coming together in any way that we can and having the courage to be vulnerable and reach out and just sort of dive in and go for it. That's what I heard today. All right. So what are we going to do now? All right, Dee Marie, you need to take us home.
You've been listening to The Method, Real Talk for Real People, presented by the Interfaith Student Dialogue at Perkins School of Theology. This episode of The Method is sponsored by Better Community Development Incorporated, restoring lives, rebuilding communities. The Business Experts, Denman, Hamilton and Associates CPAs. Make an appointment with the business experts today. And St. Andrew United Methodist Church, Little Rock, where we're people helping people. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Method 3. Executive producer, Kristen VZ Knox. Produced by Deborah Bell, Chester Jones, C.E. McAdoo, and William Robinson Jr. Technical director, Doug Pierce. Technical support provided by Perkins School of Theology. The Method, Real Talk for Real People was hosted by Stephanie Hayes and is written and created by Dina Marie Hamilton. In the words of Mahatma Gandhi, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. This is your announcer, always me, Dee Marie, thanking you for your support and being down with the method. Be blessed and be empowered. The Method, Real Talk for Real People is an Opportunity Knox production.
Like The Method? Then follow us all the time. Like The Method on Facebook, hit us up on Instagram, or follow us on Twitter at The Method Podcast. It's easy. By doing this, you are empowered to ask our empowerment guest questions, give us immediate feedback on the show, gain access to empowerment information, see listings of the music used for the show, and post pictures and shout-outs. We look forward to your posts and tweets. Thanks for supporting The Method, Real Talk for Real People.